Welcome to Spiritual and Ambitious. I'm your host, Whitney McNeill. I'm a certified medium and spiritual teacher, and I help spiritual and ambitious souls just like you live your life purpose through your career and attract abundance by connecting into your intuition and spirit guides. Let's get spiritual and ambitious. Welcome to this episode of the Spiritual and Ambitious podcast. I am really excited today. You're in for a treat. I have my friend and colleague, Candice Hozza here. Candice is a spiritual strategist and business intuitive, and her mission in this life is to give back to others with her gift of intuition and to be able to be the voice that lives inside of others. Today, we're going to be diving into your mission and alignment in the Akashic Records. We're going to go deep into those ingredients and how they can create transformation in your life and in your business. And oh my goodness, it looks like Candice has also spent 5,000 hours in the Akashic Records with over 700 business owners. I can't wait to talk to you. So welcome, Candice, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Whitney, for having me on your podcast. It just means so much. And hello to everyone out there.
I'm so happy that we got connected. We kind of got connected in a weird way. It was, your name was like everywhere for a little while for me. And I thought that I had met you before. And then it was so interesting because I actually met your friend and I could just pick up your energy, I guess. And so finally we got introduced, and that was a wonderful connection. So I'm so glad that we've been in contact and have just talked about so many things. And you're here, I know, to talk about the Akashic Records. So tell me a little bit about how you got started and what the Akashic Records really are.
So I'll tell you a little how I got started, and then I'll answer the next question as well. So how I got started with the Akashic Records is I was working at a university. I wasn't happy in my relationship. I wasn't happy in my body. I wasn't happy with the money I was making. I didn't feel aligned anymore with the university. There was something happening, and I kept hearing a voice, and it kept saying, calling all spiritual leaders. And I was like, get out of here. Stop playing with me. I'm not going to do this. I'm my master's degree. I work at a university. I live in a conservative area, like that conversation that maybe some of you have had. And
I'm raising my hand. Yes.
And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. Sorry. Thank you very much. And then eventually I said, look, if you can give me my a retirement and my medical insurance, I'll retire. Well, that happened. I ended up getting cancer, and then I actually got my medical insurance and my retirement, but I didn't want to spend it yet because I was young. And so I was like, well, I forgot to ask the universe for a specific amount. So please make sure if you ask that request, tell them how much you want to make. The gift ended up happening that I had been enjoying the Akashic Records through the process of not being happy with a whole bunch of things in my life, and it felt very overwhelming for me. And there was this magical healing component in the Akashic Records, and that's what started the transition in my life.
Tell me about that magic. I want to know about this magical healing moment. Like, can you share about that?
Yeah. So, I've always been intuitive. I always saw things, heard things, felt this unique spiritual connection, understood things before they happened, and was embarrassed about it. And so during the Akashic Records, like during this healing, she'd say, do I have permission to open the records? Well, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to. So I was opening them. I thought that was the routine. And so I was opening them and I could see more, and I start connecting with more. And finally, the person reading my record, she's like, well, what do you mean you see this? And I said, well, I open the records with you and I see this. And she started laughing. And she says, I think you'd be really easy to train. So I signed up for her training because I wanted to read my own records. Well, then she had a training to read other people's records. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. But the magic of the transition, like things started to happen and move in my life. I was stuck. I was stuck in a career I didn't like. I was stuck in a marriage I didn't like. I was stuck in a body I didn't like. Well, I was grateful for my body, but I didn't like all the components that were happening. So that's what happened. That's where the magic was at for me.
I love that. So, what do you feel like the Akashic Records really are? Like, how do you describe them?
Well, so many people say they're these books, right? So I started to create this image of a book. But the truth of the matter is, I think why they call them the books is for me, they feel like more like a database. I literally feel like I'm plugging into a resource that is absolutely infinite. So it's an infinite space of truth, wisdom, and love. It's also a space of infinite possibility. And that's why it is so beautifully married with heart centered business entrepreneurs, sacred creators, spiritually practicing type people. That's why this works so well because it's almost like a beautiful married partnership, so to speak.
So, when you're in the records, like, what exists there and what kind of information is there for people to receive?
Wow. When you say that, I literally, my nose started to get like I wanted to cry. And I wanted to cry not because I'm sad, but when I go in there, it's intimate. Like when I'm connected to that person, it feels so intimate. It feels so expansive. There's no past, present, and future. It feels like one thing. It feels like everything's within one. And when people ask questions, and I teach how to ask the highest and best questions for the highest and best insight, I see the highest probabilities of outcomes, the left side and the right side, and why the left side and why the right side. So I'll see the person, like if it's a lawyer or a business decision or somebody that you're hiring into your business, I can see if it will work out and why. So I give you that information. And then to me, that's empowering. So why I didn't want to read the Akashic Records is because I felt like it was disempowering to be like the empowering Oz. And so I didn't like that, except when I found that healing component, then I'm like, oh, winner, winner, chicken dinner or Boca Burger, whichever is your thing. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. And so that's how I fell in love with them. And that's why I started to do it.
Now, you said left side and right side. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means?
Sure, like the highest probabilities, the going left
Yeah.
or so when somebody asks a question, like for example, you might come to me, a client, I ask for permission to open your records, and then they'll say, Candy, I want to change my programs from individual reading to group programs. Will that serve my clients the highest and best and why? Okay, that's a question. See how distinct it is. So I go into their database and it's not me. I'm a channeler. So I call it a Google search for your soul. I'm the voice of Siri. That's my only role. So I'm plugging into your energy. I can only read your energy, your database. And so when we go into it, it'll say, like, for example, you know what would support you is because your energy is going to be more in alignment with doing less individual readings and more group work, you're actually going to show up higher and better. So that's one way that it supports you. Now, the other thing is it may support your revenue achievement with a group program because you can add, right? And so they talk about each individual thing and they break it out for you.
I like that. Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever I've asked my spirit guides for messages, one of the questions that I've learned to ask is, what's the energy around this decision? Or what's the
Right.
energy around this option? I like how you said you teach how to ask questions that will get you really the answers that you need to hear in that moment versus the yeses or the nos, because everything is a probability. It's interesting. I even have a spirit guide that will give percentages, like
Mhm.
percentages of the outcome. It's so wild, right? It's really interesting. So, the Akashic Records, I've heard some people talk about these are the records from every lifetime that you've ever had. Is that what you feel too?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, this goes into past lives. So, where I see a lot of blocks in business owners is in past lives. Now, think about the uniqueness of this. There's about 9 parameters in the Akashic records that you heal from. And so, one is past lives, one is vows, one are implants, hooks, entities, all the things that can kind of get us stuck, energy cords from past relationships. Sometimes you have some energy still coming in from a past relationship, especially if it's been intimate, you're sharing certain spaces of your body, and that really can lock things in. So, what I see when things release is when I go into past lives, if you've taken a vow of poverty and you're a business owner, can you see why there might be a challenge? Or if you're in a relationship and you were having sexual problems, say, for instance, with your relationship, but you took a vow of chastity in another lifetime and that's coming over in this lifetime, there's incongruency for what feels right for you.
I can't wait to get into that. I definitely want to dive a bit deeper in there too. But before we get there, I do want to ask you, you talked about the healing that you had. I want to ask you, how have you seen the Akashic Records show up and help you in your business?
The Akashic Records were probably the last thing I ever thought business owners would want or need, to be honest. And so I was going to be a relationship coach, which I think I would have really sucked at that, to be honest, because that's probably still not my highest and best suit in life yet. But who started to ask and knock on my door were the business owners. And I started to understand why, Whitney. It's because when we have literally a mission, it lives in our heart, but we work on it with what? Our heads. And so we get stuck in our heads with these 35,000 decisions that we naturally are making in our business and life every day.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And when you're stuck in one thing in your business, if you're doing a launch and you can't decide what you want to do for your launch, everybody stops. The whole crew says, ee, like it's a big squeak. And so we can't have big squeaks in our business because those squeaks equal revenue loss. And
Yeah.
that's what I started to see. And so the people that were coming to me, like I can remember this one woman, she was making $35,000 a month in a business that had some brick and mortar. So when I say this amount, you're thinking, well, that's a lot of money. What's the problem? Can I please have that? But she wanted to make more, right? And so she's now making $125,000 a month on a regular basis. I've been watching her income because I want to look at this. Like, why is that increasing? And she said, because I'm making easier decisions because I have your support. So I bring my decisions to the Akashic Records. We go through boom, 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 this way, that way, that way. Sometimes she'll have like 30 things that we talk about and we get through. And so that's why I think it's a really good support because it's our hearts that are in our businesses, not our heads. We have to use them, but getting back into that heart space, that's where the energy or the juice, I believe, of our business lives. And that's all
Yeah.
part of our database.
I love how you spelled that out. I feel that too. I feel we get so lost in our heads and we will sit there and think about, well, I should do this or I should do that. And we kind of forget about why we're doing it in the first place in a way. And if we can just get back into that energy and feel into it and really, I think this is a great tool. This is so great because so many people do think in business, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And they forget to use their intuition or they forget that they have these tools, which are really, really great. And I do want to talk about the 4 core blocks that hold businesses back or business owners back. But
Mhm.
one thing I want to ask before we get into that is what do you see is a consistent theme that comes up in the Akashic Records for most people? What's like a consistent theme that you're seeing that people need to work on right now?
Self-love.
Yeah.
Everything seems to boil down to that. After we release the blocks that are holding us back, the next thing is our identity. Like, who are we? Are we $1 million business owner? Are we a $500,000 business owner? When you start these businesses, being able to see yourself as a moneymaker when maybe you haven't been, I think is one of the challenges. And you said this the other day. You were on my podcast and you said this with reading intuition, and I never thought about it for reading intuition. Self-love and an attachment of loving yourself more is also a way to get a deeper connection with intuition. I never thought about it like that. But when
Yeah.
I see people coming in business, their identity, their new identity, because
Mm.
our world has changed. No matter how we want to look at it, and I like to be very positive, but that pandoodle kind of created some different things. And I say pandoodle for a reason, not to be silly or to berate it. I understand there were lives lost during this. But the energy is so strong with the other word. I like to try to diffuse it a bit. So that's why I say the Pandoodle changed our identity. And
Yeah.
so it changed the identity of our offers and our business. And so what I had to do, or what I made a decision to do, was to devise a 6-step process to help with our identity. So that's what I think people need right now: more self-love and more of an understanding of who we really are now and who our
Mm.
businesses are.
Yeah, it's so interesting that we can fall out of self-love, and I don't even really know why we do it. I'm sure you do. I think we get lost in all these things that maybe aren't in alignment, or we focus too much on the external and forget.
I can tell you what's happening because this is a bit, it's in my book. We create a BS story. And it's a belief system story, and it's a BS story. It's not the truth, right? It's like, here is the truth. Here's what I do see in the Akashic Records. So I'm going to use my hands and I'm going to walk you guys through what I'm doing. So our businesses and who we are vibrational beings, right? So I'm making my hands go across like a little wave in front of a Zoom room. And so, like, it's up to about where my forehead is. This is where our businesses live. Our businesses have an energy field and a voice. And that space above us is the highest and best, our highest achievements, the highest aligned clients. That's what our business wants, because it doesn't have a BS story. It came here with you. You're coded for a mission. That's your quantum leap blueprint of wealth. But here's what happens. Here's us, and I'm going about where my chin's at. And so in between, I never realized this is our head, but really that's where the 4 core blocks live. And so our BS story is what's holding ourselves back. And those 4 core blocks are the 4 things I've seen in over 700 businesses, 22 different countries, 5,000 hours of reading. There's 4 core blocks.
Let's dive into that when I come back. So, we're going to take a real quick break. So, everyone listening, stay with us. We're going to talk about the 4 core blocks and what business owners really need to know the most right now. So, we'll be back really quick. Let's be honest here. Do you have a zillion oracle cards in your possession, but you just really want to find that aligned deck that works with you? Or do you just like to collect fun oracle cards? I am so excited to announce my Messenger of Spirit Oracle is here. This is a 52 card deck with a booklet that includes a short and long description, as well as affirmations and an aligned suggested crystal to use. I am over the moon with the way this deck looks and feels, and the energy and the vibration. And I'm so happy to feel connected to this deck. So I'd love for you to order over at messengerofspirit.com/cards. And I want to celebrate with you. As soon as you get these cards, I'd like for you to tag me on social at Messenger of Spirit and tell me you got them. messengerofspirit.com/cards. All right. Thanks for hanging in there. We are back with Candice Hozza, and we are talking about the Akashic Records. And she's getting ready to tell us the 4 core blocks that are holding our businesses and ourselves back right now. So, can you go into that, please? We all want to know.
And so I was writing this book called Align Your Business, and the person that was my ghostwriter said, well, what are the 4 things that are holding people back? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And then I start thinking about it. And yes, I did know. And how many times do we say that in our lives when it's really not the truth? So here's what the 4 core blocks are. The number 1 block, this isn't really necessarily in order, but is a birthing block. So if you can imagine that when we're creating something in our businesses or in our lives, like a new job or, a new program or a new offering, imagine ourselves as a perfectly formed pink rose. Now, nobody tells a pink rose how to form, right? You don't go out or turn a switch on and say, okay, it's rose blooming time. Let's push the button. It's coded, and so are we with our mission. And so when we're birthing something and something is going slow, all that it means is not all of the parts are together yet. How that shows up is you've placed a request to the universe. I want a new relationship. I want a new business. I want a new program. And all these little pieces have to come together. And that takes some time. And so patience for this block is needed. That's the solution. The second block is the personal energy block. And that's when we're moving along in our businesses, like we're achieving, we're growing, we're making money, and we're freaking exhausted and we're burnout. And so that block is when we kind of meet up against a hard wall with ourselves and have to make some decisions. We also might be having some health challenges, or like you were talking about, we don't even go to the bathroom from client to client. It's like boom, 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 right?
Right.
And so then that's the personal energy block. There's a past life block, and I see this quite a lot. I've actually created a block release just so people can have this because I can't meet with all the clients. But the past life block is in one of those 9 components I was talking about earlier. It could be in a past vow that we took. It could be in our genes, in our DNA. It could be in our grandparents' transgenerational DNA, right? It could be energy blocks with other energy cords that we've had. So that's another block. How that shows up is that's your blind side. It's like, I've had all this healing, all this, and I've been through every program I know. Usually a past life block, that's where the challenge is. The final one is the identity block. And how I realized that we had a block is by looking at the business owners and some of the challenges that they've been having with the identity of their business. Something has changed dramatically. And so then I created a 6-step process to get back into alignment. And that's how that's how the whole thing started.
That's so good. With 4 core blocks, how can you figure out which one you have? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Oh, yeah. And it's in the book.
Your
So-
book is amazing, by the way, and I need to get that link. So we're going to link to that in the show notes. Trust me, anyone listening, you have to read her book. It's so amazing, and the stories are so great. So we'll definitely do that for sure. But any thoughts that you can
Yeah.
just share here to give a little inkling, like, oh, I think I have this block.
So the birthing block is you feel stuck. You can't get that content out. You can't find that next relationship that you've been looking for. You feel stuck.
Gotcha.
The personal energy block is you feel exhausted and tired, and you need to make some sort of a change. You might be overdoing things in your business. A past life block is your blind side. How that shows up is you repeat these patterns and you're so frustrated because you get so far and then like this self-saboteur pops in. Why is that? There's something in your energy field that's in the past life block. And the final thing, how the identity shows up is you had a great business. You had a great program. You knew who you were. And then you got on a podcast and somebody said, "Who are you?" And you sat there and went, what do you offer? Because things aren't settling well with people again. You're like, I used to offer these programs and sell this like a hotcake. And now all of a sudden I can't sell anything. So something's going wrong, usually with finances. You're having repeat patterns with finances, like not getting to that next level. So that's what I see.
Oh, that's great. So I do want to talk about how do you work with people and helping release these blocks?
So I have a program called Align Your Business with the Totally Woo. And so twice a month, we call them Woo Wednesdays. And Woo stands for Windows of Opportunity. During those times, you can come in to the program and we release the blocks that are holding you back. You're allowed to ask questions to help with the alignment process. And then we do an energy attunement. That's one way I do it. And then the second way is I actually have in my program, anytime you would feel a block, that you can come into the program twice a month. Say you just are feeling it, it's a weekend and you're like, I don't want this block. I also have a recording so they can also learn about how to release.
Thank you. So I've been in your Woo Wednesdays, and I talked about this on your podcast, which I'm going to link our conversations to your podcast in the show notes too. But I wanted to just kind of tell this story again to everybody. I was like, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to ask this question. And the way that Candice has it set up is that her assistant kind of feeds the question to her. So she has no idea who's asked what. So I asked a question to her assistant. So Candice had no idea that it was from me. And I had asked a question prior to this to my guides. And my guides gave me nothing. It was like crickets just chirping. Nothing. You don't need to know right now. Nothing. So when you tuned into my question, again, that you had no idea I asked, you also said, your guides don't want you to know right now. So I was on the other end of Zoom being like, what? Just tell her. Just tell her what it is. So it's so funny because sometimes we reject our own guidance, but I love coming to those Woo Wednesdays. I'm glad I got to be part of that because it was a great validation, but also you gave me some more insight too on how to release a block that I was having. It was basically like, you're blocked right now. This is what you need to do. And I wrote it all down on my sticky note. And I thought, okay, I still have, some insight as to how I can release the block to then get my answer, which was really, really helpful. So thank you for that. I highly recommend everyone to check that out. But I also wanted to ask you too, what do you feel like most business owners need to know right now? Like a message, either channeled or from the Akashic Records?
Yeah. Well, so I'm just going to close my eyes. If you take a deep breath in with me, Whitney, I'm going to actually open the records and I'm going to open it for the energy of your podcast. Can you state the name of your podcast so that the energy of the Akashic Records is aligned?
Sure. Spiritual and Ambitious with Whitney McNeill.
I love that. So the very first thing that they're showing me is people, there's arrows and they're pointing this way, that way, left and right. And so there's a lot of confusion in direction is what I'm seeing right now. Like, where should we be going in direction in our business? Should we, people are starting to feel free right now, but then what's going to happen in winter? Should we have that, live event? Should we be going more virtual? Should be speaking and planning that? And so I see businesses are a little bit stuck in left and right directions. And that's what they're showing me right now. Where should we go right now? What decisions should we make that can help support my business? Okay, so the second thing that they're showing me is, this is kind of tender to my heart. They're showing me children. They're saying, if you have a child, please be paying attention to your children because we came into this as stable adults. They're still learning and growing in a world that's probably been the most uncertain in a very long time. So they're just showing me small children. So I understand what they're saying is watch your children right now. They're in need of a lot of emotional support. If you feel you can't give it to them, seek the help of professionals. This is a reading from the Akashic Records. This is not my information. I want to make that really clear. They're showing me a third thing. Transportation. I don't understand why they're showing me this. Oh, I kind of understand. I think they're trying to be very gentle about travel with us, meaning, people have gotten used to sitting a little more, I don't want to say at home, but in their environments. And I understand now thank you guys. What they're showing me is, what do we really need next? Like, what do we really need? What do we really want next? And start asking some things to the universe. Do we need more support? Do we need more money? Do we need more fuel? Do we need more understanding of our environment? What are the needs that we have right now? That's what the guidance is coming in. The last thing that they're saying is love, love, love. All we need is love. That is not a song, but it is a song. But it is a message for each and every one of us that love is free, love is abundant, and love is the highest vibration that there is. Please love each other right now. Everybody needs more love. And the message is closed. Messenger spirit.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So everyone listening, Candice just opened up a message for you. So if you're listening to this podcast, no matter what time it is, whether it's 3 years from now or the day that it's released, know that that message is what you need to hear right then and right there. I also wanted to just point out for everyone listening, So Candice, I love how you said, I don't understand what you're showing me. And then your spirit guides will say, oh, wait, here it is. Here's the message. I share this inside of my programs where sometimes when we don't understand what a symbol means, let's wait for more information. This is a perfect example that I know you do this on a consistent basis, but for everyone listening who's just getting started with your intuition, or you're in one of my programs and you're just learning that lesson of your spirit symbols, know that more information will come. All you have to do is ask. So that was a great moment to share. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for that touching message. That's all we need to do, I think, is that love too, right? Like that love message is so very important. So I do want to ask you, how does being spiritual and ambitious show up in your life since you're on the Spiritual and Ambitious podcast?
So, for me in my life, I call myself a spiritual strategist and a business intuitive. And I do that for a reason because here's what I find that's a bit of a challenge for spiritual leaders. I'm going to spit it out here, I promise. One of the things is sometimes we're not as grounded as other people, right? And so that's why I believe we need both spirit and strategy in order to have a successful spiritual business. And that's why I called myself a spiritual strategist, because I believe in strategy. Worked at a university for a whole bunch of years. There was a whole bunch of strategy. My background's in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. There's strategy around that. So I didn't want to leave that part of myself off of my identity when I stepped into a spiritual business. And so I think that blend is what ended up having me go into the world and do the alignment piece. So, that's how it showed up. I never thought I would be here. I never thought I would write. I always knew I'd write a book. I just didn't know how it would come into fruition. So it all came in. Sometimes if you don't know the how, just do it. Do what you need to do. You're not always going to figure out the how. I'm in the middle of figuring out a how with a couple programs right now, and I don't really know all of it. It's okay. Just take one step. Take the next step, one foot in front of the other. That's all we get, right? We get
Yeah.
one moment at a time.
One moment. I always like to say, if you can't see the vision, just take that next step, that next breadcrumb, just that one thing to get to that place. So, how can someone get started working with you? I know we've talked about some of your programs. What is that next step to working with you?
So what I do is I invite people into what's called your superpowers. So we all have superpowers. So Whitney has the 4 intuitive business languages. Am I saying that right?
4 intuitive languages.
It's
Yeah.
4 intuitive languages. And I have something that's a superpower quiz. So what you get with the superpower quiz is you learn about what your mode of intuition is, how accessing it's already showing up in your life, how to optimize your mode of intuition, how to serve others with it, what to do when you are challenged, and how to get unstuck. And so this is a free superpower quiz. It's www.candicehozza.com/superpower. And we'll put that in the notes, I guess, right?
Yes, we totally will. Awesome. Is there any other last piece of advice that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Yes, I've been noticing a calling lately. So, some business owners are coming to me to want to learn something different. Like Whitney teaches is intuition. Do you notice that people are coming to you like from walks of life that you would never think because they're starting to be called to their intuitive language? If you're
Mhm.
listening to this and you're feeling called, I didn't want to do it. Whitney was sitting here saying she didn't want to do it. But if you're being called, why are you being called? You're not called to something that they don't need you for. Please step in and step up because you were born for this. You might not know it today, but if you're listening to this, you may be born for it. So seek it out and learn.
That's a really great message. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful. Thank you to all of you listening.
All right. So thank you all for listening and joining in. And please check out Candice's book. It really is amazing. I've read it and the stories are so powerful. And you're also going to want to check out her superpower quiz at CandiceHozza.com/superpower. We will link to all of these things in the show notes and how to find her, where to find her. And thank you again for listening. I will see you in the next episode. But until then, here's to staying spiritual and ambitious. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And if you loved it, would you please share it with a friend? I would also love your review and a reminder to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find me at messengerofspirit.com, and you can take the 4 Intuitive Languages quiz and find show notes there too. If you want to connect on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, you can find me at Messenger of Spirit. If you want to continue the conversation, join my free Facebook group at messengerofspirit.com/group. I'll meet you right here next week. Here's to staying spiritual and ambitious.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.